Hi, I'm Trevor Conquergood, and this video is about a new feature of the Floriani embroidery software as part of our Winter 2020 update, and it's called Bean Fill and Variable Bean Fill. And essentially what we're saying here is we now have the ability to fill in a shape and have the lines of our fill be a bean stitch. And so first of all, I guess you have to know what a bean stitch is. That means a stitch that sews kind of like more than one ply. As you know, we can do 3 plies or 5 plies or 7 plies. And so when we do a bean run stitch, the stitch goes forward and then back and forward again, and each stitch gets done at least 3 times or 5 or 7 or 9. Well, now, and let me just go ahead and cue up a design that I prepared. This is an example of a piece of fill that I have set as a variable bean. So basically, this is going to work on anything with a very open stitch spacing. So you're going to use your mesh fill tool, or you're going to use your motif fill tool. And so what this is the basic sort of mesh fill. And now we have the tab sort of fill, and then we have the fill bean tab. And so this is a new tab in the properties box that only comes up when you use a mesh fill or a motif fill. And so when this little tab comes up, you can come in here, tell it that you want to make it a bean, and tell it if you want it to be 3, 5, 7, 9, or 11 plies. And the last option is, do you want a randomization to your bean? In other words, it can be done by stitch or by line. And so what I did was I created the first one with the mesh fill, and I used the density of 3, and I did a 3 ply bean fill. And then I made the next one a same 3 ply bean fill, but randomized by stitch. And then finally the third one randomized by line. And so all 3 repeats. And then the second row, I made the spacing a little bit wider. So instead of 3, it's 4. And same kind of idea, I used the same parameters of the first row, 3 ply bean, and then a varying by stitch, and then a varying by line. But so the only thing difference between the first row and the second row is the space between the lines. And then the third one down here, you can see that I used a motif fill. And again, this was a new tab in the properties box when you use a motif fill. And so now, just like before with the motif fill, we can choose to put bean. And so this is bean style none. Now I've made one with bean style 3 plies. And I made another one, and it's bean style 5 plies. And so essentially, when you look at the stitch out for that, you can see how it starts out with no beans. And that's a 3 ply bean motif, and that's a 5 ply bean motif. And what I can tell you is this really makes your stitches look bold and really quite stand out. And so, you know, if you're making nice big motif patterns and you want to really give them some life, give them a bean stitch. And you can see here how it just really amplifies the thickness of the lines. And so moving up to the top, this is simply the mesh fill. So this was with a spacing of 3, and that was with a spacing of 4, and it's a bean stitch. So I guess really to make this make sense, I probably should have put a stitch out to the left of here that was like no bean, and then that could be a 3 ply bean, and then this is varying by stitch and varying by line. And isn't that interesting? I really liked it here when I got the spacing open to about 4 millimeters apart, and I did the varying by stitch. Varying by line was cool too. So one line gets all 3 ply, and another line gets all 5, and another ply gets 7 or 3 or 9, and it just randomly changes the thickness of each line. And here, throughout each line, it just randomly shakes up this number of stitches. So it'll do a single, and then a 3, and then a single, and maybe a 7, maybe then a 9, back to 3, who knows? But as you can see, it's completely randomized. But they really do create beautifully textured fill patterns. And so I really hope that you're going to find some great uses for all of the new features in the Winter 2020 updates for the Floriani software. And this video is specifically about the ability to take your motif fills and your mesh fills and apply a bean stitch, making the lines extra bold. And so I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thanks very much for listening. Bye for now.